Hi everyone, David Aragona here for the September 17th edition of Horses to Watch, taking a look back at opening week of the Belmont at the Big A meet at Aqueduct. Three replays to bring you from this past week, actually one from each of the 3 days that they raced, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of last week. And let's kick things off with a race on the outer turf course at Aqueduct. And I'll talk about it when we start the replay, that we saw a track bias on this outer turf course. And I want to show the 8th race from Friday, September 13th. This is a New York bred optional claiming 45,000 non-winners of two other than the allowance condition for fillies and mares, going 6 furlongs on that aforementioned outer turf course. And let's play this replay. Start with a head-on of the break just to show the number 9 Weekend Rags, who will be a little bit obscured on the pan shot through the early stages of this race because she's right there on the outside in a clumped pack of runners. But the thing you want to take note of when watching this replay on the outer turf course is that it's one of many races from this past week that was just dominated by horses that rode the rail. Actually, check out the superfecta finishers in this race. The 1, 2, 3, and 5. Yes, that's them all racing on the rail at this point in the race. And it just was one of many races where if you didn't have a rail position at some point in the running of this race, you were not going to have success. And that is certainly the case for the number 9 Weekend Rags, who is still a little tough to see. She's outside the number 4 horse right now, the White Silks with that white cap, just ranging up 3 to 4 wide, never towards the inside at any stage of this race. And you will see the eventual winner in the Pink Silks. That is Ms. Big Bucks. She does finish out in the center of the racetrack, but like I noted earlier in the race, she did spend the first half of the race on the rail. And I think that allowed her to build up the momentum that she did when she swung out to ultimately put this field away. And Weekend Rags, that's her just plugging along in mid-pack on the outside, about 4 or 5 paths off the rail in the stretch, just never towards the inside and unable to find success in this race. And just to kind of hammer home the point of how much horses racing on the rail were enhanced in this race, you saw crossing the wire in 3rd and 4th place were the number 1 Autumn Glory and the number 5 Patria. They were 68 to 1 and 36 to 1 in this race. So some huge long shots whose performances were certainly enhanced by racing along the inside. I think performances that you might want to downgrade a little bit for horses that raced on the rail, and definitely performances that you want to upgrade for horses that were wide against that rail bias, like Weekend Rags. Like I was suggesting, many more horses I can highlight that were outside on the outer turf course, but I think you get the gist watching that replay of Weekend Rags. Let's talk about some races on other surfaces. Let's go over to the dirt course for Saturday's first race on September 14th. This was a maiden special weight event for the 2-year-olds, going 6 furlongs on the main track. Let's break these runners from the gate. Mostly first-time starters in this 2-year-old maiden event, and I want to focus on the number 5 Alias. The horse that garnered most of the attention coming out of this race was the number 7 Vacoma Rides, who is a visually impressive winner. You'll see him basically draw away under wraps through the stretch, but take note of the early portions of this race because the number 5 Alias is actually contesting the pace right inside of the Vacoma Rides. It was actually one of 4 horses vying for the lead through the opening 1/8 of a mile before kind of losing contact with the leaders, starting to drop back between horses. And you can see Jose Lezcano was okay with this horse losing 1 or 2 spots, but is trying to get after him now to not lose too much position as he starts to get that kickback coming back in his face, coming around the far turn. And you can see right here, he starts to get covered with that dirt. He's not really loving the kickback coming back at him around here, as he's kind of running with his head up in the air a little bit. Not super green, but you could just see he's gaining some experience as he's trying out all different positions through the early stages of this race, being forward, dropping all the way back to last at the quarter pole. And this horse actually is going to finish second in this race. And you can see right here, as soon as he's able to angle to the outside, he really picks up his stride. And despite the fact this was not a race that fell apart by any means, the pace was actually on the moderate side, and the winner was right up there contesting the pace every step of the way. Alias is going to finish really well to actually catch a more experienced runner a moment's notice for the runner-up spot there. The winner of this race, I think, it definitely is a horse with real talent, but Alias, to me, ran just as well on debut, considering that unconventional trip that he got. And this horse is certainly bred to be a good one. Buy Into Mischief, the Dam, was a horse who won her career debut with a big speed figure, was ultimately grade 1 placed in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. So he's definitely bred to be precocious and a nice sprinter. And I think this is one that we could see sustain that early speed that he showed better when he comes back for his second start and has gained knowledge from this first experience at the races for trainer Rick Dutrow, who can get runners to improve over time. Let's take a look at one more race from last week, moving on to the Sunday card, September 15th. Race 6 on this day was a New York bred optional claiming 45,000 nominators as to other than for the older males. This one going a mile and an eighth on the inner turf course. And let's break these runners from the gate. Focus on the number 3 right at the start. Clear Conscience just gets slammed between rivals right there. He's in those hot pink silks with the black cap, and you can see what it does to him. He just is unable to gain any momentum coming out of the starting gate and finds himself all the way at the back of the pack, losing contact even with the second to last runner in this field as he tries to just regain his stride and his composure after taking such a hard hit coming out of the starting gate. And that's not really where this horse wanted to be. He's a horse who does his best running from a stalking position or at worst in mid-pack, and finding himself this far back was kind of unfamiliar territory for Clear Conscience. Now, we did see horses that were racing towards the inside also do well on the inner turf course. Also, we saw horses that were generally forwardly placed do well on the inner turf course. I wouldn't say that there was as significant a track bias as we saw throughout the 3 days on the outer turf course this past week. And it might have been situational looking back at it. I think paces had a lot to do with the way the races played on this inner turf course. This one had a pretty fair pace, and you could see it plays out like any horse had a chance, but not when you get the kind of trip that Clear Conscience does. And you can see here, Jose Lezcano is trying to regain some of that lost position from the start, but he's doing so here by angling out into the 3 to 4 path, and he just gets stuck there for the entire run around the far turn. That is him in those, like I said, hot pink silks with a black cap at about second to last right now, and he is legitimately 4 wide all the way around this far turn, just kind of adding insult to injury with the way the race started off. Then from there, losing all the ground that he did around the far turn, he's just going to have no chance to do anything in this race. And he doesn't achieve much. He ultimately finishes 8th of the 9 runners in here. It's going to look like a pretty disappointing result when this horse comes back and you see the running line in the PPs. But this is a trip that I think you do want to be very forgiving of, because he just never had any chance in this race. Things went wrong at the start, and they went wrong when the real running started around the far turn. So I think you really do have to give Clear Conscience a pass here. He took some money in this race for trader Mark Cassidy to go off at odds of 5 to 1, coming out of the nominators of 1 allowance victory during the Saratoga meet, where he did get a good trip that day, but I think he showed himself to be a horse that had really moved forward heading into the new barn. I think he's a horse that can have success at this level. He just needs the trip to work out better than it did last Sunday. So those are all the horses to watch for this week. If you want to follow any of these horses moving forward, you can add them to your horse watch on DRF.com and get email notifications to your account when these horses run back in the future. You can also go into your DRF formulator or Timeform USPPs and use the notes feature to make your own notes about what you saw in these trips or any other trips that you find watching replays. And those notes that you do put into the charts will show up at the horses' running lines when they are entered back in PPs for future races down the line. Everybody, thanks for tuning in to Horses to Watch this week, and I'll be back with another batch of replays to analyze for next week of the Belmont at the Big A meet.